Yeah. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up, let them know it's about to go down. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Yes. It's Friday night and you are listening to the sounds of Sports Reports as ordered. 2-5 is here, Mr. Logical in the building. We are here tonight to give you a mock draft. You know, we're going to talk about the ins and outs of it, you know, where teams should go from where they are currently, which teams the draft is a non-factor for. That and much, much more. He is the world-famous, world-renowned, cool, calm, and collected. He's representing New Jerusalem. He goes by the name of Mr. Logical, you know, and then, of course, I'm your unorthodox statistician down in the Alamo. 2-5. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. Liquid Death in hand. We are everywhere that you get your podcast. Say less, say more, and let's get right to it. So, Mr. Logical.
You're
on Tuesday night. We have the first round of the NBA draft, and I don't know why we're doing the second round on a separate day besides TV money. It just feels kind of pointless to me. But all week long, you know, there's been this talk. You know, we talked about Darren Peterson only wanting to work out for the Wizards. You know, people got mad at me on TikTok because they said we were doing irresponsible reporting by saying that he didn't want to play in Utah. It was like, yo, we just having a conversation. But anyway, now's the time. You got AJ DeBoncha, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer. Trae Young just opted out the other day, probably just restructuring, but he opted out. Where do you go if you're the Wizards to start this off?
I don't think you can go wrong with Darren Peterson or DeBoncha.
Okay.
If one guy is clearly articulating that I want to be here, then just go with that guy. I think that if that puts you in the best position, is like, listen, the guy wants to be here. How well is he paired with, if you don't move AD, he pairs well with AD and Trae. That's your three-headed monster. You got the aging veteran. You got the crafty undersized guard, which isn't as like it's not an indictment like it used to be, you know, before a week ago before Jalen Brunson went off and became the MVP in NBA Finals. So you got an undersized guard that can score, and then you wiggle yourself right in there as a 2-guard, big body, versatile. I say you go with him because he wants to be there. I think that's one piece because we talk about Utah and AJ might feel like, you know what? I'm comfortable in the Wasatch, in the Beehive State. I'm comfortable here. Maybe conversations behind the scenes are like, I play my high school prep basketball here. Let's keep it real. Getting a black dude to go to BYU who wasn't Mormon before he got offered to BYU, you really gotta love Utah because, like, Provo, Utah, it's Utah County is like a dry county. Provo is definitely a dry city, so it's like you can't even get a drink at a TGI Fridays. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they have a TGI Fridays because you can't serve alcohol in this whole town. So it's like if you get a guy that can commit to that kind of an environment, he must really love the state. So I think Utah sitting at number 2 is probably have a lot of influence on why Darren Peterson in this camp is like, yeah, we trying to go to Washington.
See, for me, couple things, right? So the Wizards, I think that they know what's going on, or they think that they know what their plan is, but the rest of us don't. So that's where this pick is going to tell a lot, because if AJ DeBoncha is the pick, you're talking about a guy that could at some point lead the NBA in scoring, could at some point, reach a Jason Tatum-ish type level. Obviously, he has to work to get there. I'm not saying that he's already that. So it kind of shows that we're more in the here and now. You know what I mean? Especially if you bring Trae Young back. You're in the here and now. If you go Darren Peterson, there's a whole lot of shifting that has to go on, because you just drafted Trey Johnson last year. You still got Bub Carrington in the backcourt. You got Sarr, what I'm saying?
Who?
Bub Carrington.
Exactly.
Nah, he's good. Don't do that. He, he was the only rookie that played all 82 games in his rookie year. Don't do that to Bub. And he's from Baltimore. Stop that. But anyway,
send him to Philly. He's just as home in Philly as it is in Baltimore.
Play 82 games. But yeah, so then they got, Derek Coulibaly, Keyshawn George on the wings. So Washington is a filled out team already, that I think that if you bring Darren Peterson in there, you're just kind of shifting the rebuild. You're not getting to the apple, you know what I mean, which is the playoffs. You're just literally shifting around year to year, trying to move the cards around.
As long as this one is deliberate, because I know I like to make a lot of parallels to the NFL. When the Cardinals drafted Josh Rosen, had Steve Wilkes as a head coach. Then they ended up with the number 1 pick again, and they got rid of Steve Wilkes. They got rid of Josh Rosen. They brought in Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. I think sometimes, as long as your plan is we're going to start anew with this one, I think you'll be fine. If you're going to come in there and try to create like this dynamic that doesn't make any sense, like, we're going to play 4 guards and AD. And it's like, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But as long as you come in with this idea, like, you know what, we're going to bring Peterson in and we're going to move some of these pieces and we're going to get a couple of role players here, a couple of young players here. As long as you have a plan, I think as long as you have a plan, it'll work. The problem with Washington, it seems like over the past few years, it's been a lot of haste in the plans and a lot of interchangeable parts that come in like different times. So the plan that was originated in September 2024, by the time October 2025 comes around, you have so many different people and places that the plan has to be changed. As long as they lock in on like, hey, this is what we want to do going forward, then I think adding a top tier talent to that and as part of your trajectory, I think you'll be fine. But if you keep all the other guys, you have no idea what to do with them, then you would do the same thing if you drafted AJ number 1 overall. Like, you wouldn't know what to do with him either.
And I think that, if Trae, because like I said, he opted out, and he's still eligible for the max, so other teams might hit him up, I'm thinking more like he's staying with a 3-year deal. But if he does leave, then I think Peterson's the pick, because, he's expressed an inclination to want to play point guard, to play more on the ball. So I think that you can roll with that. But if it's me sitting in the chair right here, right now, 2-5, I probably want Cam Boozer for his playmaking skill from a big position. That's where the league is headed to. We're seeing, or that's where the league has gotten to, where you're starting to see these bigger guys in more control of the ball, initiating the offense, to where you don't necessarily need a point guard in the traditional John Stockton kind of way. But if I'm the Wizards sitting in this chair, I'm going with AJ DeBoncha, because you got the number 1 pick. Why not pick the best player? That's the way I look at it.
It's normally that simple, but we've seen year after year with the NBA draft this interwoven, convoluted, process. Like, oh, you draft my guy at 6, I'm gonna get your guy at 9. We're gonna have him wear the hats. And then while they're doing the interviews, we're going to have them change hats.
I know. Why is the NBA draft so bad at that?
after they do all the media, so you get drafted, you got the Phoenix hat on, you holding the ball, you doing the Phoenix hat, you do the interview, and then you get pick 6, and at pick 8, they trade you off. Now you have 37 pictures of you in a Phoenix hat, and now you got traded away to the Bucks, and it's like this,
Yeah, like they're so bad at that. Like in the NFL draft, they announce it, before the pick is made. We have a trade. The Cleveland Browns trade the number 53 pick. In the NBA, like you're sitting there like, oh yeah, like we got. Hold up, what are you doing in Boston?
I think the NBA just feels like, because the NBA is one of those leagues where like one guy can like change your fortunes, so they keep it real tight to the vest. Because say you had a guy rated at 7, like say you had what's the young boy name out of North Carolina, Caleb Wilson.
Yeah.
Say you had him on your list at 5, and you thought he was going to slip to you, and then you find out that a deal's being made at 2 with Utah for the 4th pick, and you sitting at 3, like, you know what? This guy might be better than we thought. Let's go ahead and slide in here in front of them and take this player, because, like I said, one player could change your fortunes. But I think a lot of times it's just way too much clandestine movement. Like, this is not the CIA, it's the NBA. Make your pick, give him the correct hat, let him take the pictures with his family with the correct hat on. But you like Cam Boozer a lot. You mentioned that the other day, too. Like, you really...
So I don't think that he's going to be a superstar per se. I just think that he fits well with any of these teams, really, just with the skill set that he brings. I think that he's the player that you can get a lot of things out of. Like, like when I think about it, right? So we used to always argue back in the day about, hey, if you put LeBron on 27 of these teams, correct, he's getting them to the finals. As great as Dwayne Wade was in his prime, you can't say a statement like that about him. You know what I'm saying? Because they bring, besides the fact that LeBron is just a better player than him, LeBron brings all those different skill sets to the table: the rebounding, the passing, setting the defense. He's as good on defense as Wade was. Like he could do a lot of different things that could help fill gaps of when you're talking about a team like Washington, or any of these teams really, because they're all bad. That's why they're picking where they are. So you got a guy like Cam Boozer. He can fill a lot of different gaps. If you're rebounding and slacking, he helps. If you need a passer that's willing to pass, he can do that. Like, he just brings different things. Whereas with Darren Peterson, you're relying on, I need you to score. Like, AJ DeBonchi, you're going to score. You know what I mean? Like, so he just brings that. And I think Washington is a team right now that, depending on what happens with Trae Young, because we know that Trae Young gets a lot of assists, but I still don't necessarily view Trae Young as a guy that's trying to set up first. Even though he does get 10, 11 assists a game, he still takes wild shots. He's not disciplined in that point guard kind of way. So like Boozer, I think, can affect the game even without scoring or trying to score. So that's why I think he fits with any of these teams.
Okay. Yeah. So you're really high on him. I saw a video last week where his ladder, like his high school tape, the AAU circuit, the EYBL, and all these different circuits, he weighed a little less and he moved a little different. And I think he put the muscle on at Duke, and obviously being 18, 19 years old, going to the NBA, you're going to have to ramp that up a little bit. Not enough to affect your game, but you're going to have to be able to not get Wemby'd in the paint the way Wemby kind of gets pushed around. And these guys that kind of get pushed around the paint, you're going to have to put something on to fin that off. But that would be my pause there, is because I think AJ putting on, I'm not a physiologist, but if he puts on a little bit of weight, I think his length will still be there. I think his athleticism playing from the 3-point line to the paint, I don't think it is affected that much, because I think his size would be an asset. It won't slow him down. I think the same thing like Peterson, even a guy like Darren Acuff. I think a lot of these younger, smaller guards, because of the way they play. I think Boozer might have to play somewhat out of position similar to like Bam Adebayo, but I think Bam is still even a little bigger than Boozer is.
Right. Well, we got to remember too, these dudes are coming out of college, so like they're going to theoretically put on weight at some point, theoretically. But Boozer also, there was a lot of knocks. Like if this was all everything created equal, no NIL, that type of thing, I would probably tell Boozer to go back another year, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? But I think the NBA, I think the NBA
a top 3 pick. If they had him between 8 and 11, and maybe slipping to 13, but
I think this era
pundits are like, hey, he is a top 3, top 4 pick.
Well, I think this era of the NBA helps because of all the spacing that teams try to play with. That's where I think, his size, that you're talking about right now doesn't necessarily matter in that way because, people talk about how unathletically gifted they think he is, you know what I mean? But then he out-athleted Caleb Wilson at the Combine, who was considered to be a KG clone. So, so it's like one of those things where obviously we're not going to know until we see them on the court with their new teams. But I think that people are looking at a lot of these players through the college lens, whereas the NBA is a different game. And like, even though it's the same sport, it's a different game. So that spacing, I think, creates a lot. Like with Darius Acuff, right? We talk about his defense
line being 3 feet. That 3-point line being 3 feet closer really helps a college 2-3 zone defense.
Yeah, and when we're talking about dudes like Darius Acuff and how bad he is on defense, in college, a lot of things are system based, whereas sometimes in the NBA, you have teams that switch everything, or you're seeing people like Wemby and Mobley kind of play that center, Chet Holmgren play that center field role where they're just kind of watching the back line and waiting for Acuff's guy to get by him so they can go help out. So, but we'll see. But I think the Jazz are in a nice position because Darren Peterson, to me, fills out everything the Jazz is looking for. They got their big men. They went and got Jaren Jackson Jr. They still have Lauri Markkanen. Walker Kessler's a free agent. They got some beef going on right now. We'll see what happens there. Keontae George is eligible for an extension, but I think they're going to hold off until next year, but he's going to run the point. So putting Darren Peterson there, and then you got Ace Bailey as well, I think that you're seeing the completion of the Jazz lineup. And that's why the other day I made that comment about, if they do get Darren Peterson, put him next to Ace Bailey and Keontae George with those big men up that they have, you might be looking at a top 6 seed as far as, or at least at the very least, a play-in team hosting a play-in game. So from that standpoint, I think he fits perfectly. But depending on what happens with Walker Kessler and how, because he's been frustrated, there's been some public discourse about how he wants his money, but he's been hurt. So
and they're
now
losing too. That's the
thing. And they're losing.
They're not a winning organization, so losing the guy that might be a top tier talent to do your pseudo rebuild. So Walker Kessler's not a very good negotiation point because, like, yo, dog, we could just move you. We don't really need you.
Right.
We're not winning anyway.
And we could fuck it all up and draft Caleb Wilson. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could just, like the Jazz could just do anything at this point. But I like Darren Peterson there because, like I said, I think him being there helps out Ace Bailey, from the standpoint of there was a certain expectation of Ace from the scoring standpoint that Darren kind of relieves a little bit and makes his life a little easier.
You don't think AJ helps that? You don't think AJ helps that too?
I think AJ does help that, but I don't know what it looks like from the standpoint of, are him and to me.
Can you think of another team, like maybe like a Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris space, like a big guard and like another guy who's just as big, but he plays the front court?
Well, I think that, like, without trying to be lazy, you know what I'm saying, the easiest would be Tatum and Brown. You know what I mean? I think that I could think of from that standpoint. But the problem is that neither one of them play the defense that Tatum and Brown play. Like, I think you need at least one of them to be semi-functional on defense.
Both of them can't be manadors.
Right. And then because what happens when it's almost like a bigger version of what we used to talk about with Donovan Mitchell and Garland. You know what I mean? Like if AJ DeBoncha's out here having a 9 for 24 game, you can't afford for Ace to come out here and go 6 for 19. Because neither one of them are right now at this stage are going to be able to lock down on right. So that's where. So I do think that if AJ is there, if the Wizards do take Darren Peterson, I think you have to take DeBoncha if you're Utah. Saying the connection is already there, but also Boozer obviously has a connection to Utah because of his dad, and his dad still works there in the front office at some capacity. So I don't think it's a given that anybody is going number 2. Like I feel pretty good and safe that DeBoncha's going number 1. Yeah.
If AJ goes 1, and obviously I believe there's reports that come out that says, I'm talking to an NBA insider, he's gonna be number 1. But we all know that we'll call it 68 to 70% of the conversation pre-draft in any sport with a high marketed, publicized draft. It's fugazi. It's like it's not real shit. It's fool's gold. But if AJ goes number 1, which most people think because they have him listed as the best player.
Yeah, just with the way the NBA is today, he has to go number 1, I think.
I could see Boozer going 2, especially considering if the conversations, that's like I mentioned before, the Ace Bailey rumors and conversations last year before the draft, when he show up in the Utah, I can't imagine that a Utah team would want to go through that 2 years in a row, considering they didn't get like an absorbent amount of production out of the guy that they took who rumored didn't want to be there last year. So it's like, why we want to do it again to ourselves just to hope that this guy just comes here and just starts playing basketball and feels like, oh, I love it here. Whereas if Boozer's already part of the organization, I'm going to go ahead and I'll take Boozer 2 and fill him right in because I think he's more likely. Like I said, some places you need some kind of association with. Some places you could just go to. Like anybody can go to LA. Even if the Clippers are terribly run, you can go to play the Clippers because it's LA. You could go to the Golden State Warriors, even Sacramento, because it's in a great area. I think as a young basketball player, you'll go anywhere and kind of just be like, you know what? At least this part of the NBA life is plentiful. You're not getting that in Utah. So if I'm not getting 52 to 55 wins here, then why am I here? Because I'm not getting anything off the court that, kind of fills my personal energy. And then on the court, we're getting tossed every single night. So it's like, why do I want to be here? You know what I'm saying? So it's I understand that piece.
Well, the other thing is things have been eerily quiet because, just a few months ago, you and I were sitting here talking about, well, what's up with Darren Peterson medically? He was having these cramps, having all this, all these issues, not playing games, taking himself out. Like we were wondering if he was going to slip in the draft. And that seems to be put to bed with all the talk that's going on. But this is a draft. So does that really mean that it's put to bed? You know what I mean? Like, could he end up number 4? You know what I mean? And then, not that would turn the board upside down because, like I said, I think that everything starts with the Clippers at 5. I think those first 4 are going to be the first 4 in some order. But, you know what I'm saying? But is it guaranteed that Peterson is going to be one of those top 2? And if not, if you're Memphis now on the clock, now, saying they have the catbird seat because they don't have the pressure now because if Peterson and DeBoncha go 1-2 in whatever order that is, I don't think people care necessarily who they take because it's going to be one of those 2 big men. So with Caleb Wilson, for example, I talked about his defense the other day and how he's the big man version defense of Darius Acuff. But from listening to the scouts talk, he has everything you want. Now it just comes down to, was he doing the college thing where like, I'm not going to go balls to the wall. And
I'm Steven myself, yeah.
Right. And he got injured anyway. Granted, it was his hand, but he got injured anyway. So it's like now, and like I say, he's got those KG comparisons. So they're obviously seeing something that I don't see, and they're more equipped at their job to know that stuff than I am. So from that standpoint,
They're just
So
guessing. No,
well,
they're just guessing into a different microphone than you and I are.
well, from that standpoint, right? Well, from that standpoint, let's say that Boozer is the pick there. I think, I think Boozer and Edey on the glass could be a problem to deal with. Caleb Wilson.
Are they quick enough defensively to rotate?
That's a great question.
Put them both out there.
That's a great question, and I think that Boozer is, because, like I said, I think he's more athletic than we get credit for. Like and I'm not trying to make a comparison here, but nobody stopped Michael Jordan but Dean Smith. So there's a lot of college stuff that goes on that we don't get to see the best versions of players. Like they drafted Cedric Howard last year, and I like him a lot. He came from Washington State, real quiet, was on his way to Duke. He came out, so I ain't gonna say he lit the world on fire, but he had a pretty good start to his rookie year before he got hurt. Memphis has been doing the thing in the draft. Just 2-3 years ago, they drafted Jalen Wells, and he finished second or third in Rookie of the Year. So Memphis is doing the right things in the draft. So I feel confident that they're going to make whatever choice is going to be the best for their team. It's just going to be a matter of who they think that is.
But are they still committed to Ja? Or is that a move that's going to be made before the draft?
No. So if Ja is on the roster come the start of the season, it's because nobody wanted him. That's what I think.
Or Memphis is asking for too much in the trade, because I think a lot of teams will take him.
I think he's a buyout dude. Maybe we get to February or whenever the trade. I think it's December now. We get up to the trade deadline.
Be on the bench, John Wall style in street clothes, and then
because half the time he doesn't play anyway. You know what I mean? When's the last time he played 20 games in a row? You know what I mean? Or he might have done it this year, but he didn't play many after that. So so at this stage, you know what I mean? I think that if I'm a team around the NBA, you know what I mean, do I view Ja as a problem? From the standpoint of what am I bringing into my locker room? He's obviously talented, he's injured a lot, but what am I bringing into my locker room?
He's going on, and the thing about it is crazy. He's going on 7 years in the league. It doesn't seem like it, but I think he got drafted.
Him and Zion were 2019.
So it's at some point you got to be able to adapt and adjust and play well. But if you're Memphis, you just got to replace the pieces you move. So you moved off the Triple J. So whoever's there that can replace that, you can rebuild.
And I think that's where Caleb Wilson fits in.
Yeah, they were number 2 in the Western Conference a few seasons ago before it all went to tears. So it's obviously they have the pieces they need. It's just, like I said, I wasn't a big fan of the Bane move that they made last year, but it did.
I liked it. They got 4 picks out of it. I just thought, I didn't think that they were in wholesale mode just yet. But as the season played out, we kind of learned that it was okay. They are in more of a sell now kind of position than we. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about, right? Free agents aren't coming to Memphis, and then and then we had this whole discussion about the hotels in the city, and so I think if you're a team like Memphis, you're in that boat where you kind of have to do drastic times come with drastic measures. So you got to kind of get what you can get, because you know what I'm saying, looking at the free agent list for this year, right? And I'm not going to go down the whole list, obviously, but just throwing.
Austin Reeves is not even entertaining whatever you.
Yeah, Austin Reeves ain't thinking about you. Trae Young ain't thinking about you. Maybe you could get a Zach LaVine, but he's got a $49 million player option, so he's probably going to take that. You probably can't even get a CJ McCollum or a Hartenstein at this point. So if you're Memphis, you have to just swing for the fences and go, give me all the picks that I can get. And we got to try to OKC this thing. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? And like I said, they do a great job drafting. Ja Morant was a good pick. He's just been hurt. You know what I mean? And I named a few guys that they drafted the last few years. I didn't even mention Gigi Jackson. So Memphis has a good front office, I believe, as far as the drafting part goes. But it's just going to be a matter of, can you get the guys to stay once they get there?
Yeah, the past couple of years, it seems like there's been a lot more dysfunction. They fired their coach. I believe it was like 9 games left in the season. He was fired.
Yeah. And they did that for Ja.
Yeah, but Denver did a similar thing, but Denver had a little bit more of a solid, productive, available player asset that was going to make up for whatever firing. So, yeah, Memphis in a tough spot. Chicago hired Thiago Splitter. I don't know how Portland didn't. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the negotiations went. I don't know if he asked for too much money. We've heard the reports of the new owner of the Trailblazers, who reportedly is worth $4.2 billion, or the team. He bought the team for $4.2 billion, but wouldn't give out T-shirts at the playoff games to save $1 million.
Still hasn't hired a coach.
And it's like, I get it. Like, these money guys, they accumulated this wealth, whatever means they went with. But it's like, dog, if you're worth $4 billion, if you had 4,000 bags of $1 million each, using one bag for T-shirts for game 3 of a playoff game, you still have 3,999 bags of $1 million each. It's like, you could have spun that, but if you're just going to use it to hopefully pump up your market and resell the team in 2 years, it's fine. But I imagine Portland's going to be in a terrible position for the next few years. But, another man's trash, one man's trash, another man's treasure. I think Thiago Splitter, Chicago, 4th pick overall. I think Boozer played a little time in Chicago as well, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did.
I think so. You got whatever association to the city from there. And or you just go best available. And if you think Boozer or Caleb is the best available there, you just make the pick. Chicago's been in proverbial purgatory from the time Jordan left, the D Rose got there in Thibodeau, and then D Rose was on his MVP climb, and then his injury, and then they've been kind of just one of the teams that suits up for 82 games in the NBA for the past 10 years or so. So they need to get back to prominence. We always had these conversations about the East being weak. This opportunity to rebuild. I don't know if they want to be in that Austin Reeves conversation with Josh Giddey already on tap.
Yeah.
Make some moves. Make some moves.
And that's
really going to build your team.
And that's the thing with Boozer here, right? And I promise this is going to be the last thing I say about Boozer. But you're on it. So when he I'm rookie of the year next year, you could be like, yo, I told y'all before the draft he was going to be one of these guys. So it's like, well, this is one of those things, right?
Your analysis. Let's hear it.
Like, I know everybody theoretically wants to be the number 1 draft pick. The only reason, in my opinion, that Boozer would go 4 here is because he's a part of the Wu-Tang Clan. You know what I mean? So, like, you got dudes like Raekwon, Ghostface, Meth are great rappers. But then you're comparing them to each other. And then you got to include Inspector Deck and Jizza into that conversation. So as you're sitting here, you look at Boozer as number 4. Is that a disappointment? And it's like, well, not if we're talking about these other 3 dudes in this way. Like, somebody has to be the God of the crew. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, say, even though he's a lesser, but somebody's got to be God. You know what I mean? So that doesn't make you bad or overrated or like bust potential. It just means that this is just a big pot of stew that has massive great ingredients. So from that standpoint, I think Caleb Wilson will be the pick here at number 4 with the Bulls. And I like it from the standpoint of, now, this is my thought, Mr. Logical. This is an exclusive 2-5 moment.
All right.
So back in the day, the Warriors took over basketball. And the reason that they were able to do that was because they had this great shooter, 2 of them, in fact. And they had Draymond, who could defend anybody. They had Iguodala, who could defend just about anybody. So they were able to go small. So while they were getting pounded on the boards, they were able to change their lineup with versatility, get smaller, and make you come to their level, and it even things out a little bit. Now with the Bulls, if you're looking at Caleb Wilson, you're looking at Matas Buzelis, Jalen Smith coming off the bench, maybe you go out and get a Walker Kessler, And now you're going the reverse of the Warriors where, now you're making everybody play big because now as we look at the NBA Finals, right, Wemby theoretically walks onto any court with the advantage. But the Knicks were able to push him around with both Mitch and Cat. You know what I mean? So, not saying that the Bulls are going to play the Spurs in the finals or anything like that. But just from the standpoint of, we're trying to be creative now. And with Tiago Splitter being a big of sorts when he was a player, there may be more of an emphasis. Yeah, there may be more of an emphasis on that can change the way that the Bulls, because they finally got out of the front office. They finally got a new front office in there. So we could see a different Chicago Bull team culture than we've been used to seeing.
Yeah, and we understand that this is a copycat league. We say it about every single league. So I think even a statement in and of itself is a copycat statement. But watching how the Knicks played against the Spurs is probably going to get a lot of teams ideas of maybe we can build our team that way. Or how do we build a team? How do we build a team of specialists at the dirty work? Do we have a guy that just rebounds? That's the thing that he does well. He just rebounds. We have a guy that defends wing players well. We have a guy that can go get a bucket. So we start to build your team that way. So I think if Wemby and the Spurs would have won, then everyone would have been looking for the young 6'5" guard. The kind of accoutrement that went with that, with all the just basically playing 4, 6, 7 guys, and then 1 7-footer. Yeah, because they thought that would have worked. So the Knicks are kind of giving these guys a different blueprint. Unfortunately, the Bulls have kind of underperformed for so long. So a lot of these picks that they have and these players that they have are going to be due money. And it's if they lock in this year and get it right, then maybe paying these guys will pan out. But I just feel like a guy like Buzelis, a lot of energy, high energy guy, but he hasn't really been in the upper echelon of his draft class. And his draft class wasn't really top tier either. So that's pretty tough for them.
And for the first time, I think the Bulls are in a position to strip it down because, I think that the Bulls were, for lack of better words, they were proud in a certain way. They didn't want to tank. They didn't want to, they wanted to be competitive, even if that meant just going to the play-in.
This is the wrong year to start tanking.
I know. And that's the thing about it, though, because, as free agents, they have Anthony Simons, who was making 25 this year. They got Colin Sexton, and they have the number 15 draft pick as well. So, you know what I mean? So they got room here to really actually strip it down and, still be semi-competitive depending on, whoever they draft here, depending on how that person is. But number 5 is what I was talking about. That's where the draft gets interesting because the Clippers are on the clock. Sacramento wants Darius Acuff. They're at number 7, but Brooklyn is at number 6, and I got a theory on that I'll get to in a second. But if you're the Clippers, you have the pick of the litter as far as these guards go. You know what I mean? So you could go Michael Brown, get that 6'5" guard. His back seems to be on the up and up according to the reports. There's no concerns right now, but it is a back, so I'm always going to be concerned.
Yeah,
but
that's very concerning.
Yeah, they got Keaton Wagler right there from Illinois, about 6'5", 6'6", but he's that smaller frame. So he
very
might be that
frame.
Yeah, so he's going to be that very guy that potentially gets beat up by the end of the season until, like you were saying, until he puts some weight on.
It's going to be very tough to put him next to Garland, who's not really known as a staunch defender himself, and he's getting paid a lot of money, so it's going to be even harder to move. So I think you got to get a solid. You have to get a solid either defender or a guy that's there's no a back or undersized. You have to get a guy that you can plug and play right there, especially at 5. Yeah. But why he's not always going to be available, and however that goes.
Well,
and arguments and everything.
That's what I was going to bring up. Is it time to trade Kawhi? Because
I'm gonna check his contract and see. I hear you. Let me check his contract.
Yeah, because during the season, right, They traded Zubac. Brought in Benedict Mathurin. They brought in Garland, like you said, at the trade deadline. Got rid of Harden. So there's some kind of youth movement going on. And think about this. This season was probably legit, and I'm not doing the hyperbole thing, but this season was probably legit the best season Kawhi has had. You know what I'm saying? Unless we want to obviously count the Toronto season because they won the championship. But from start to finish, I think this was his best season. You know what I mean? And so now we're at that standpoint of you just had your best season potentially, at least since you've been a Clipper, and we didn't make the playoffs.
$50 million.
Yes, but hold on, wait, I'm getting there. But we didn't even make the playoffs with you potentially having your best season, right? So now, why am I going to theoretically bring you back when there's a team in this state that is constant in win now mode? That team being the Golden State Warriors.
You're saying a deal for Golden State and LA to send Kawhi up north?
Yes. Because I don't think Golden State's getting Giannis. I don't think LeBron is realistic. Team. Yeah, I don't think LeBron is realistic.
He's an unrestricted free agent in 2027. So he's due $50.3 million for 2026, 2027.
Right.
If you think, obviously the Spurs it's not going to happen.
Right, not going to happen.
I don't know what his no trade clause looks like. Phoenix. I don't think Houston.
I don't know if Phoenix has the parts to get the deal done.
I don't think Phoenix has the parts.
You know what I mean? And
East, I don't know if I'm a free agent or if I'm a guy in that Kawhi space. A lot of Eastern teams seem to be getting like the top draft. Well, they're getting a lot of top draft picks and seem to be kind of not really working out that well for them. I'm not sure if I want to go East if I'm Kawhi. So I'm looking at one of the 10 teams that made either the play-in or the playoffs out west.
Yeah, so like the Clippers could go any route here. So let's just say they keep the pick. If they keep the pick, I think it's one of three guards. The two that I brought up, Michael Brown or Keaton Wagler or Braden Burries. Because Braden Burries would be the smart pick because he brings that defense, that Garland doesn't have to help that out. If you were to trade Kawhi, you need defense to replace his defense. So I think Braden Burries would be a good pick there. But just for the sake of conversation, I'm going to go Wagler here. I think Wagler, even though he's a little smaller weight-wise, he also provides that ability to run the offense. That way Garland could play off the ball a little more, like obviously not the majority of the time, but from time to time, Wagler can kind of initiate the offense and, you don't lose much. He doesn't turn the ball over much. So if they keep the pick, I think it's Wagler. But I do think that Sacramento is at least going to call them and say, we want Acuff. You're in our, Brooklyn's in our way. Help us get them. So that's why I think that the draft starts here, because there's so many different ways that they can go. And I don't know. That's just the way that I'm handicapping it right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just feel like after like 8 to 14, a lot of these teams are already like playoff teams that just kind of through previous deals ended up in that space. I could just see a run on like players not out of college because the one and done versus the NIL versus the transfer portal is like it gives NBA GMs in some resort, like not that many great options because less players declare for the draft. So now you have these young freshmen who are like, well, this junior wants to go into a senior year, wants to bulk up and get an opportunity to get more picks or be a higher draft pick. A lot of these freshmen are like, you know what? I'm just going to jump into the draft, and you're going to put yourself in a position where you end up in Brooklyn. Brooklyn has been so bad for years, even with the James Harden trade and everything else that came along with that. It was like they have been a bad team since then. Even with KD and Kyrie and the injuries and COVID and everything else, is like they never really came around. And they I don't know what the front office looks like. I know that the ownership has changed 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. So do you really want to be the guy who's kind of undersized that ends up in Brooklyn and just kind of end up in this purgatory?
Well, speaking of Brooklyn, and then that's the thing. Brooklyn's got some options too, because, Brooklyn, Michael Porter Jr. was really their only player of note last season, as far as
himself right out of it. He's going to talk himself to a suspension. He's going to get on another podcast and say some dumb shit about gambling, or he don't care about this, or he hates Pride Month or something. He's going to say something to get his ass removed from the team. He hadn't shut up since he left Denver, but keep going.
So Yegor Demon is a free agent who they drafted last year. He's a restricted, so they're going to bring him back. They also drafted Nolan Traore last year and Ben Sarath, if I remember correctly. So the problem there is you're really guard heavy. But this is 2-5's problem. So the other night I asked Mr. Logical, should Brooklyn move? He told me an emphatic no. The reason that I even brought that up is because you're Brooklyn. You need star power. What happened to Brooklyn goes hard. Now, with that being said, if you keep the pick and you're looking at it from that lens, I think Acuff or Michael Brown has to be the pick here. And I would lean more Acuff because he's already established as a star. Like, people already buzzing about him. His name is everywhere. Not always for the best things. Like, he was on Draymond's podcast. Yeah, he was on Draymond's podcast and talking about how bad his defense was and everything. But Michael Brown, I think, has the type of game that can make him a star in that way. That, like, maybe his name isn't the brightest right now in that Acuff conversation, but his style of play, if it works out, will get eyes on Brooklyn. He'll be that exciting player that people might tune in to see. So with that standpoint, if 2-5 is Brooklyn, I'm going Darius Acuff because I want the attention. I want the eyes on my product. We're downtrodden. You know what I mean?
Like the Allen Iverson cosign.
Right. And and we're not going to win.
Having Iverson courtside in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and we're not going to win anyway. So I might as well try to get as exciting as I can because people aren't going to watch me just to watch me. Now, with that being said, with the Kings, Acuff's family, has a good relationship with Scott Perry, who's their GM. BJ Armstrong, I know people remember that name. He's the assistant GM, and he just lights up every time he talks about Darius Acuff. So that's why I think Sacramento is going to try their damnedest. They're going to try everything in their power to try to get him. Now, with that being said, let's say it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? You either take Michael Brown, or if you're Brooklyn, maybe you look at trading back because depending on what your goals are, you're not getting a player in this draft that's going to make you the Charlotte Hornets all of a sudden.
But that's rare in the NBA draft because it's more prominent in the NFL draft because there's so many different needs that a team could have. So the affinity to trade back, because if you're sitting at 7 and you feel like there's not a guy on the board that can help your team win, it's probably unlikely that a team that's at like 13 will really want to jump to 7 and get a guy. Because it's like, if you don't see that guy at 7 that's available, you're either, and somebody's like willing to jump from 11 to 7 or 10 to 7 or whatever that number is, then either you're not scouting properly or this other team is just reaching. But like I think for the
Well,
NBA,
I think it's a value
the
thing.
same.
Well, I think it's a value thing because Brooklyn could draft somebody like, say, a Dai Mara. But I don't know if you want to take him with the number 6 pick, for example. You know what I mean? And there is a team, Mr. Logical, that thinks that they would be NBA champions right now if they weren't injured. And they got number 12 and number 17. They've been collecting picks for all these years. You know what I'm saying? At some point, you got to put those picks to use.
Yeah, but those picks are like, are you going to get – I mean, they play so deep as is already.
Right.
We talked about it before
right.
all the injuries happened in our preview to Western Conference Finals. They run like 10 guys out there already. They're not going to get 2 guys in this first round now and run the 12 guys out.
No, not necessarily.
We know they're going to lose a couple of bodies.
Right, yeah, because, like, you know, they do have Day'Ron Sharpe is a free agent. They have a club option on him. And then all the rest of their free agents are pretty nondescript dudes that nobody really cares about. So, like, they could let all of them walk, which they would have to obviously refill the cup, if you will. So that's where something like that comes into play. But then you got Sacramento at 7. You know, the team that, you know, people felt bad for. They should have got the number 1 draft pick because they didn't tank. They just lost ethically. You know what I mean? And, you know, they got stuck with the DeRozan, you know, Levine thing. So this is the problem for them, Mr. Logic.
I don't think that's really stuck, man. Like,
It's stuck.
Those are talents. Those ain't
they are, but they're talents that don't fit together. And then you got Domantas Sabonis too. And out of those 3, which of them even can spell defense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a piece because I think those 3 players. I think what you can get 65 points out of those 3 guys.
And think about it, right?
65 points and 30 is, you know, 25 rebounds and, you know, 14 assists. I think that's a good grouping.
But why would you think he could? Never mind, I ain't gonna do that again. But but DeMar DeRozan is also about to turn 37. You know what I mean? And, you know, so your franchise is going in a whole different direction right now. You know, Levine, you know, is a problem because he's a free agent, but he has a $49 million player option. You know what I mean? So
he's signing that.
So
he's
so
opting
like,
into that.
Yeah, he's opted into that. So you know what I mean? And then the rest, you got Russell Westbrook as a free agent, Precious Achiuwa, you know what I mean? Like, so like you're in that same boat of you don't even have a free agent that I can look at and go, oh, y'all gotta re-sign him. You know what I mean? Like, if y'all want to move forward, you gotta bring this guy back. So that's why the Kings, I think, are desperate for Acuff. You know what I mean? If they don't get Acuff, then you know it's going to be tough skis, and I guess you take whoever's left out of Michael Brown or Wagler, or you know what I mean. Like you
they're
just
gonna
get
take
stuck
somebody
with them.
foreign.
Maybe
They're gonna take some 6'11" foreign guy that his highlight tape against some Lithuanian team looks incredible, and then he's not gonna come to the States.
So
Which
the Hawks
happens. A lot of these middle lottery teams, because like for me the lottery is 1 through 14. A lot of these teams were probably way worse than where they ended up. Like I think Sacramento was way worse. Brooklyn was definitely way worse than the 6th worst team in the league. So I think, you know, a lot of them end up with these picks where it's just we got to take a body because we're on the clock.
right. So Atlanta at number 8 is interesting because they have the number 23 pick as well. So what do? You know, if you're Atlanta, do you bring back, because CJ McCollum's a free agent, so do you let the money free up and get something in free agency? Do you bring him back and draft, say, maybe a Kingston Flemings and have CJ McCollum kind of play that CP3?
That was a young guy out of Houston, right?
Yeah. Do you do something like that? Or like we were talking about the other night, Atlanta had all the wings that you could want, but then they couldn't match up with Cat. Mitchell Robinson, you know, had a field day on the glass. Do you go get an Adai Mara there at number 8? You know what I mean? As the big man in the draft. So they got McCollum as a free agent. Kuminga, Gabe Vincent is a free agent. You know, so
I bring Kuminga back. I like Vincent off.
I think I let Kuminga walk, or I try to sign and trade him.
Nah, I like Kuminga because
I don't think they need him.
Kuminga, but I will let CJ go. I like Kuminga because I think he was with a winning organization on Golden State. I think he waited his turn, in Golden State and kind of got jerked around because it was a conversation we were having the last couple of years. It's like, obviously you're not. It was like, does Steve Kerr like him or not? Does he not fit into the rotation?
Yeah, you could have developed him and used that Jimmy Butler money somewhere else.
Yeah, so because you pretty much got the version that we think. I think Kuminga could be Jimmy Butler in a few years. But if they would have taken the first couple of years and let him run, once he shaved his hair and started getting his shape up, it's like, all right, cool. You understand how to present yourself to the public. But yeah, if I'm Atlanta, I bring him back just because you need a guy. You need a guy that's going to be. We talk about who got as far as pundits. This guy's not a 1A guy. He's not a 1A. He's not a 1A. Your team needs a 1A. That's all. You don't have to view this person like it's 30 NBA teams. Your guy just has to be 1A for your squad, and you build around him. I think Kuminga is one of those guys, and I think you pair him with the guy like you say, you're talking like Kingston Fleming, one of the smaller guards. I go big. Wash your hands.
Yeah, that's why I said a Diamara could be that person because they're going to have to address it either way, and they do pick at 23, so there's the possibility of getting a bigger dude at 23. But then you got the Dallas Mavericks. Everything that I've been hearing for the last 3 or 4 days has been Braden Berries, and more Braden Berries. Which I think would be a good pick for them. We're going to have to see what they're going to do with Kyrie. Coming off the injury and everything. I think it's time to move off of Kyrie, start that build around Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag and Berries together is your defense for the next 8 years or so. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that if you got somebody that good, especially defending from the backcourt, I think you have to take that. Now, is Gafford going to go? Are you keeping PJ Washington? That's where you get into the roster building part of this, but I think that Braden Berries is the best pick for them.
Yeah, you're going to have to make a decision if you're going to give the keys straight up to Cooper Flag. He seemed to come on late in the year. We know it was the conversation with him and Con Knipple about being Rookie of the Year. So are you going to give him the keys? Then you got to start and give him a running mate. Granted, this isn't the same thing, but like Jordan and Pippen, you got to get him a guy that's like, listen, you two are going to be our core, our foundational players. You've already had a good year. You can follow his lead. Let's go, because they've had a bad run with player personnel decisions over the last couple of years in Dallas. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be smart for them to keep it simple and make it to where it's clear your team's not going to Las Vegas. I know that was theoretically part of the plan with a couple of casino owners as your team owners. But yeah, pairing him with someone that they could build with going in the future, I think that'd be perfect.
And then you got the Bucks at 10, and this is where we have a little bit of fun because, word on the street is Mr. Antetokounmpo is probably going to be on the move as soon as this weekend. And we've heard all kinds of teams. We've heard Boston for Jaylen Brown with a little Atlanta mixed in. Jaylen Brown going to Atlanta. We've heard Miami, some Kel'el Ware, Tyler Hero, so on and so forth. Minnesota's in the sweepstakes. I don't know what they would give up, but that's where it gets interesting because if you're Minnesota, we'll get to Milwaukee, but just let me ask you this one question. So if you're Minnesota, right, we've been talking about, trade Julius Randle. It's time to move on from him. So if you're Minnesota, given what you saw in the playoffs, are you willing to give Jaden McDaniels a bigger offensive role? You know what I mean? Or are you willing to include him in a Giannis deal?
All right. Just before I answer that, in your opinion, because I'm not formulating one in my own head to where I see Giannis to Minnesota as an advantage. Okay. Am I missing something? Am I just being too stubborn Because I'm not seeing where Giannis, we're giving up pieces as the Timberwolves and getting Giannis. I'm not seeing like how that works.
So there's a couple of things in my mind, and of course,
I'll answer your question about the pieces.
Yeah, of course, we would have to see it in play, to really know the answers to these questions or these things that I'm about to say. But if you could keep Gobert and you get Giannis, Ant is a willing and able defender. Jaden McDaniels speaks for itself. You're probably looking at something that rivals and probably might be slightly better than San Antonio's defense on that end of the floor. Now Minnesota's been struggling trying to get a point guard in there because there's been rumors that they might go after Ja Morant. DiVincenzo is probably going to start the season on the injury list. So now you get Giannis in there who theoretically, he's not a point guard, but he has the ball in his hand a lot. So now you get a couple of easy buckets per game because he's just going to dunk from half court, and you know what I mean? And he doesn't necessarily stop Ant from doing what Ant does. So like, for example, if he was still in the league, if you were to put Carmelo Anthony on Minnesota, him and Ant would kind of be in each other's way. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think so. I think Giannis is more in the way than Carmelo would be.
From the standpoint of spacing,
but Carmelo, I need to get to my spot and shoot the midi. But I think as far as like get me the ball so I can get a bucket, I don't think Carmelo getting away. That's the thing with Giannis. I'm not sure defensively how you stress the other team if you have Giannis because he's not a 3-point shooter. Like it's definitely not fluid. It's definitely he's not going to bring the ball up court and step into a three.
Well, no, but he's a guy that you always have to be like you can't take a charge from him. Like
you can't take a charge. Yeah, I think he's dynamic, and I think in like 2K that'd be legit. I just don't know how it works there because there's not.
I think if he goes to Miami, it's basically Milwaukee all over again. It's Milwaukee
with
a
shooter. It's not like I know Naz Reid is a shooter, and I know he was 6th man of the year, and then he was getting more starters minutes in recent years. I just don't think there's enough offensively to space out Giannis and Ant, and I think Ant needing the ball for, I'm gonna call it a 10-second shot clock guy. I think Giannis and Ant are both guys who are going to have the ball for 10 seconds out of the 24-second shot clock.
Well, I think they got to bring back the Sumu, and of course theoretically Terrence Shannon is going to get more minutes this year.
Yeah, so I think them bringing it back with their young core and then riding the Ant is our alpha wave is probably better than trying to bring in Giannis. Rumor has it that Boston was in the trade. I think that could work because Boston has a lineup that can go Tatum, Giannis, 3 people who shoot threes.
Yeah, and Derek White is in trade rumors too. Apparently Atlanta is looking at Derek White as well.
Yeah. So whatever 3 guys you put out there, even if those guys aren't really 3-point shooters, I think Boston will find a way to get Giannis, Tatum, 3-point shooters. Because I think that works a little better because Tatum shoots the ball pretty quick. He doesn't really do a lot of, he didn't really, if he's going to try to get to the paint, he's going to get to the paint. If not, he's setting up that little step back, side step 3. So I don't think he dribbles the air out of the ball. So if Giannis is doing that for a few possessions, I don't think it throws off Tatum's game.
Yeah, I think
I don't want to see another like super team trade like that. Personally, I like the way that the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals look because the Cavs got their ass whooped because
they felt organic.
They tried to microwave a team with a guy who has no April to May performance expectations or experience at all. And then OKC and San Antonio went to 7, tough game. And then the Knicks, being built the way they are, won the championship. I like how all those things pan out. Like, yo, you can't microwave a championship. I'm not even sure why, like, the Milwaukee Bucks would even take a deal that's like trying to benefit Giannis. I get that he brought you the chip, but he's been complaining about the team ever since he won a chip. It's like, cool.
And he's been doing it the Dame way, where it's like that passive aggressive, like I want to be here, but I'm gonna take pot shots and all. And then
they go get your guys. They resign your guys. They trade.
They got your brother.
Get your brother, your other brother, your little brother, your cousin. Like everybody is just ready to come to the team, and it's like, nah. And I get you want to win, but there's this, like we talked about
I think people would come to Milwaukee potentially if you give them reassurance that you'll be there.
Yeah, maybe, but like they got a coaching problem. You know, like they have a front office problem. And
well, they got our guy now. Our guy is their head coach now. You know what I'm saying? Taylor Jenkins.
Yeah, I get that, but he's the third coach in the last couple of years. He's
true.
The third coach after Giannis started saying, I want to leave. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, y'all got to figure out, like, you should have moved Giannis when they got rid of the coach, and they fired the coach because he went to his brother's funeral. It's like
Budenholzer, yeah.
Budenholzer, yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure if.
And then they brought in Adrian Griffin, which was who he wanted.
And then they fired his ass.
And then they fired him. You know what I mean? Like
they were 30 and 15.
Yeah, 30 and 13. Yeah. So I think the pick here is Nate Ament. I think this is one of the ones that I feel the most confident about besides like the top four. But but the problem with him is it's going to take a minute. So if you do draft him, you're really starting over because he'll be there defensively, I think. And it's kind of funny because he came out of high school with these Kevin Durant lofty comparisons. You know what I mean? And it's like after you watched him play in college, you're like, well, maybe Michael Porter Jr. ain't that bad. You know what I mean? And like I always say, he played at Tennessee with Rick Barnes, so it's hard to determine what he's going to be. So I look at it as very high risk, high reward. It's either going to really pay off and you're going to get a guy, that'll be a 19 and an 11 career guy, or he's going to be like 7-4 and you can't figure out why he can't score with the ability to dribble and set up that he has at his size.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Golden State, Mr. Logical. We talked about them potentially getting Kawhi. I think this could be another spot. If they want, I think this could be another Adai Mara spot. Golden State's been dying for a center for years. Porzingis is a free agent. I don't know if he did enough to stay there unless they're doing the veteran, we got to get him back, we're all in type move. If not, I really like Dominican LeBron here.
I like this performance in the tournament. I think he's a big body. I'm just not sure what Golden State's. It's like Golden State wins these championships. I'm not sure like what they do to try to rebuild their team. They had LaMelo Ball sitting right there for him. They told him they were going to draft him, and they took Wiseman, ended up moving off of him. Like I said, his injuries weren't their fault, but they had an opportunity to take LaMelo Ball. They had Kuminga. They moved off of Clay when they probably should have moved off of Draymond.
They still trying to figure out Moody.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure out loyalty. Are we still beholden to like this? What was it? 5 NBA
4 finals or 5 finals in 8 years.
In 8 years, are we still you're still holding on to that core ideology? And it's like bringing in Kawhi just reinforces we could you can't.
Yeah, and Draymond's got that $28 million player option.
Yeah, so all these guys are going to take their player option. I'm not sure if Steve Kerr's made an announcement of whether or not he's stepping down or not.
No, he signed a new contract.
But he was out there coaching like it was a farewell tour.
He was.
So, like I say, take the best young guard available that you hope you can transfer some of Steph's power to. As Steph leaves between this year, the end of this year and next year.
Yeah, he signed a 2-year extension. So
some of these teams that are like clamoring for play, like they're just coaching for cardio.
You know what
Like
I mean?
it's too dynamic to be one of the, like I said, the top 6 contenders.
And
A lot of these teams are nowhere close.
I've seen a lot of mock drafts project Kareem Lopez there, the forward out of Mexico. I haven't really seen a lot of him, but that's a name that I've heard time to Golden State. So then at number 12, you got the Thunder, Mr. Logical. Saying, of course, knowing them, they can go a lot of different ways. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to save this name for number 14 in Charlotte, but there's a guy that I think OKC could really use right now, but I'm going to save that name. Okay. You got Hannes Steinbach, who led the country in rebounds last year. Hartenstein is a free agent. I don't think they're going to let Hartenstein walk because they're still in their championship window, but they have a $28.5 million option on him. They have a $17.7 million option on Dort. I think Dort could be out, but it sounds like SGA wants to keep him around, so that might keep him in the building.
I think Dort got a bad rap because, like, I think some of his Wisconsin performance weren't that top tier.
I just think he's a bad player.
I don't think he's a bad player. I just think that
he's Bruce Bowen, but like 30 pounds heavier.
You gotta sink more into that role and like really lock in. Like, yo, I am literally a 3-and-D guy. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not trying to do anything extra. I'm just going to lock in Josh Hart style to like I'm a 3-and-D guy.
Right, but Josh Hart gives you different things. Josh Hart gives you ball handling if you need it. Josh Hart will get to the foul line and actually hit the free throws from time to time. You know what I mean? He can shoot the three more. I mean, not good.
But you need a dog. You need a dog on OKC because their big guys are not dogs. Hartenstein's a good player, but he's not a dog. And Chet is.
Oh, I just know if I see that fucking floater one more time. Oh my goodness. Then you got Miami at number 13. Eric Spoelstra. This is probably another spot for Dominican LeBron. The Heat doesn't strike me as a team that wouldn't take an older player because they're kind of unconventional in the way that they do things. So of course this is going to be
a veteran style team.
Yeah, and of course this is going to be dependent on how the Giannis sweepstakes play out because according to all the reports, Milwaukee's been talking to everybody as if they already have 2 picks. You know what I mean? Obviously they don't. They just have the one right now. So something seems imminent, at least by Milwaukee's posture. So if Miami doesn't go Giannis here or whatever the case, I think LeBaron Phyllon would be a good fit. I think he's going to be electric. I think he's going to have get to the basket capability and finishing on a Kyrie type level, but he's also 40% from 3. So, got to work on the frame a little bit, but I like one of those 2 there.
Yeah, 6'4", 185 is skinny.
Yeah.
That's slender.
Yeah, Pat will get him right.
Pat Riley?
Yeah.
You don't want cookies on the plane, though.
Yeah. So number 14, the name that I was going to keep for Charlotte that I could see OKC taking at 12 is Morez Johnson. You know what I mean? From the national champion Michigan Wolverines. To your point about Dort, if he goes to OKC, he provides that dog. I see a lot of hopefully he doesn't have the temper, but I see some beef stew in him. I think that's a good comparison for him. As far as he's working on that 3-pointer. It's not quite there yet, but
yeah, he might throw one guy into the photographer, every few games.
Yeah, and
not
I think
excessively, yeah. But you might get knocked into the photographers on the floor, yeah.
And I think he has
played the national championship game that way.
Yeah, he was probably the best player on the floor. At least in their Final 4 games.
He definitely was the most aggressive one because everyone was kind of passive, and he was really battling after offensive rebounds. I think he probably got one, maybe. I think he might have gotten 1 or 2 offensive fouls, but like I'll take that if you're being aggressive, trying to get to the basket. Granted, you can only get 5, but like I'll take that because that's the temperament you're playing with, whereas the team really needed it. But
yeah,
that didn't scream first round talent to me. Like watching any of the Michigan players really play didn't scream like, oh, that guy's a top 12 talent in the NBA draft. I just feel like it's, I don't know if the transfer portal is kind of like making it seem like these guys are really better than they are because they're all on the same team and they're on the team with 23-year-olds and the team's performing great. But like I didn't see top tier NBA player, but 6'9", 250 is what they have him.
And that's why I like him
to
to one of these.
Work.
And that's why I like him on one of these two teams, because you're not asking him to come in and be the man or come be the franchise player or anything like that. To your point about Dort, if he goes to OKC, you're just another body to bang around with. You know what I mean? Especially
you're six fouls.
Yeah, when we get to San Antonio, you know what I'm saying, and Hartenstein is off the floor because of ineffectiveness, just lay on Wemby for a couple of minutes. And then if you go to Charlotte, you're just another guy that's going to help them get on the boards, get tougher, you know, add a certain element that they might not have at this point. So, you know, so from that standpoint, I think it could go either way. I think I like it with Charlotte the most. You know, Charlotte has Kobe White as a free agent, you know, so that could be $12 million coming off the books, you know, so Charlotte could be a player going forward. Then you got the Bulls again at 15. So I think they take one of two of the guys that we just talked about, either Steinbach, you know, to keep that big theme going I was talking about with Buzelis and Patrick Williams, even though he's a bum, but whatever. You know, getting Caleb Wilson, you know, that big front court, or this could be a LeBaron Pylon spot, you know, where because I don't think they're going to pay Simons. You know, like I said, he's due. Well, he made 25 this year, so I don't think you're going to pay him. You know what I mean? If you bring back Colin Sexton, who's slightly less than Anthony Simons, that might be more of your six-man Lou Williams type role versus the guy that's going to, you know, completely run your offense. So I like LeBaron Pylon here.
Yeah, I'm just kind of starting to look into at this space, the foreign players. I think this is where a lot of the names you probably haven't heard of start kind of coming off the board. You start hearing more of those names. Because if you look at it, OKC playoff team, Charlotte's probably, you know, good with their core. Looks like the Raptors at 19. They could be in position. I know for a fact San Antonio's taking a foreign guy.
Well, Detroit, I know a lot of people
Detroit's looking for a shooter in free agency, another scorer in free agency. So I can't imagine that they're going to rely heavily on the draft.
Yeah, and I got thoughts on them when we get there. But a lot of people lately, this past couple of days, have been talking about Sergio Dallara. He's from Spain, you know, guard. You know that a lot of people have a lot of. I think that might be a little too high for him. But remember, they went in. Whoever, I think it was Portland, went and got Chinese Jokic last year, you know, and that shocked everybody. And then Minnesota went and got Jan Beringer, you know. So we do see some of these foreign players, you know, go a little higher because we don't know much about them. You know, we haven't been watching them. So, like, they have some kind of fan base, if you will. Then you got Memphis at 16, you know, who, again, could go anywhere. I got them taking Boozer with their first pick. Could Bennett Sturts be the pick here? You know, I've been hearing his name getting. I don't think he's worthy of being picked this high, but just from listening to different people that I've been hearing, you know, the Kevin O'Connors and the Tom Habistros, you know, those guys are really on the Bennett Sturts train.
Kind of plugged in,
yeah, and you know, I don't see it. If I was Memphis, if LeBaron Pylon's here, I look there. If not, I look at maybe Christian Anderson, who I think is the best shooter in the draft. You know, I'm looking at him. The only thing with him is obviously like the size. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how tall I think Ja is listed at 6'2", maybe 6'3"-ish. Christian Anderson, I believe, is more 6'1", 180. So maybe that's a little high for him given his dimensions.
I mean, if as long as you can create space, get the shot off. Like I said, we just watched 6'2" Jalen Brunson, you know, win the MVP and take on a 7'5" guy for a lot of those major fourth quarter moments. It was 1-on-1 with the big, like the ultimate unanimous defensive player of the year big. So as long as you can make it happen.
And Sturts is listed at 6 feet 186, so it's not like you're really, you know what I mean? Like
that's tough.
Yeah,
that's
why I think he's a later round guy.
Got drafted a couple years ago, and I was like, he was 5'11". I think he was listed at 5'11". But like,
well, you know, there's
that's
some
not
people
really
that
going to play.
Well, there's some
you can't
people
be
that
short
you look
and
at.
slender. You got to be stocky.
Well, you know, a guy like Bennett Sturts is one of those dudes that, as a fan, he's probably the kind of dude that you want on your team. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be scrappy. He's going to hustle. You know, he can shoot the lights out. But do I want you right after the lottery? Like, you might be closer to 30 or, you know, getting into the second round maybe. Do I want to draft you that high?
There's plenty of rooms for guys that play like T.J. McConnell.
And some of these guards got to fall.
It's hard to draft those guys in the top 20 or even in the first round.
Yeah, and some of these dudes just have to fall because of how many guards there are. Like you're already talking about, you know, Wagler, Brown, Acuff, Flemings, Anderson, Phylon, Berries. Somebody has to fall. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to see 8 guards in a row. You know what I mean? So somebody has to fall. You know what I mean? Then you got the Thunder again. You know what I'm saying? At 17. You know what I mean? So I think they probably get rid of this pick if they can. But if they don't, NBA, read my lips. Do not let OKC get Dalen Swain right here. I know that Swain can't shoot, but he could do every damn thing else. You know what I mean? He can rebound. He can set up the offense. He's 6'7", about 210. You know, he could play defense in a way that you would want to see Caleb Wilson play defense. I think this guy is one of those guys that we look back in, say, 4 years, and if he ever does figure out that jump shot, it's like, yo, how did y'all let him get past the top 10? You know what I mean? But his jumper is bad enough to warrant that he gets drafted here. But I think he has all the rest of the skills. You know what I mean? So if he just becomes a decent shooter, scorer. Yeah, I think like if you could get
he's
14 a game out of him. Yeah, like if you could turn him into an OG type player, like I think that you're cooking with grease. That's what I think.
6'8", 220, not a great shooter, but I think having a 6'8" guy who could play that far out from the hoop, it's an invaluable tool to have because you could stop another team's offense, because we saw it with OKC and San Antonio. Because I mean, granted, most recent case, but running Vassell and Castle and Carter Bryant and all these guys, 6'6", 6'7" guys, you would think that SGA wasn't 6'6" himself, the way that these guys were just swarming him the way they were. So having a guy that's 6'8", that's a scrappy guy that can really run, be that kind of defensive catalyst because he can't shoot. I think that's perfect because a lot of guys like Matt Barnes will tell you he did like 14 years in the league strictly off of defense. Draymond's been on Golden State setting screens and throwing bounce passes and playing against Jokic for the last 4 years, and he's been averaging like 7, 4, and 5. But he's just been out there because he's able to carve out a niche during a basketball game.
Yeah, so depending on what Charlotte does at 14, 17 becomes interesting. I've seen names like Alan Graves out of Santa Clara, who needs, he's 6'8", 225, but he doesn't play like it per se, which is a problem for me. But I like him. Like, he has, that 6'8" frame, and he's a shooter, all the good things. But my knock on him, and I don't know how real this is, but, he just didn't play outside of the game against Kentucky in the tournament. he didn't really show up against the better teams that Santa Clara played against. You know, like as the competition went up, he kind of shrunk, if you will. But so outside of Charlotte,
that's a bad sign. If you can see that on film in college, it's only going to get worse in the NBA.
But I think that if he doesn't go to Charlotte here, he might be a guy that, say, you could put in that Champagnie role in San Antonio, like you know, or even have him be interchangeable with Champagnie as the bench Champagnie, or however you want to do that. So, like, he has that type of potential because, again, he's not the kind of guy, and we're talking about the 18th pick. So you're not necessarily looking for a guy to come in and change your fortune. Like, you know, so this becomes more of a, can you grab rebounds and spot up in that corner? You know, and I think he can do that. So I think that he provides some value to teams, but I would also like him in Cleveland. I think he would be a good fit for Cleveland. You know,
say he shot. So it looks like he said 41% from three. That's the thing for me when it comes to a lot of these players. That 20-foot 3-point line seems to be like a very comfortable zone for a lot of these guys who are rated high, coming out as shooters from college, and then they get to the league, and it's 22-9, 23. You know, it's like it's a different monster. You got different guys of different athletic skills closing out on you. So if you're not really quick on your feet, unless you can play like Kyle Anderson, slow-mo style, like unless you can kind of master that kind of movement, it's going to be tough because they're gonna put you in every action. You know, you go to the Western Conference, you're playing OKC twice, two or four times, you know, out the year. Right. And you got to come off and guard SGA. And they're going to put you in that action every single time. It's very, like I said, it's tough for these late first round picks because you're saying like I'm a first round pick, but as the NBA has shown you, after 6, the expectations for you guys are very limited. That's why a lot of second round guys pop, because I think these guys get drafted in the first round. The expectations are first round expectations, and then they don't meet it. And then all of a sudden you get a guy like Jokic that just sat on the bench for a couple of years and comes in and shows you what he can do.
Yeah. So then you got Toronto, you know, at 19. I like Ibuka Okori here if he's still on the board. And my mock, I gave them Christian Anderson.
Okay.
You know, that's where I went with it because I think they need a point guard. Looking back at the playoffs this year, you know, Emmanuel Quickley was out injured, and they were just dead on arrival. They only pushed Cleveland to 7 because Cleveland ain't got no heart. You know what I mean? But they got the Giants everywhere, right? You know, you got Brandon Ingram, you know, who's what, 6'10", 6'11-ish.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He was supposed to be the new KD, yeah.
Yeah, you got Scotty Barnes at 6'10", who finished 3rd or 4th in Defensive Player of the Year, you know, but isn't necessarily a dynamic shooter. You know, you got RJ Barrett, who's about 6'6", 6'7", who doesn't have a shot that he doesn't want to take, but he don't have a shot that he don't want to take. You know what I mean? You know,
couldn't hit the ocean off the side of the Titanic.
You know what I mean? So now Toronto, you know, they have Jamal Shed, you know, as a restricted free agent. I think they want to keep him, but I think you still need a dynamic guard. So that's why I like Okori here. You know, Okori was that guy at Stanford, you know, averaging 23 points or so. You know, took a lot of shots. He had to take a lot of shots. People criticize him because they don't know if he's a playmaker. And I think that he's shown that ability. But he played on Stanford, so he was setting people up, and they were missing shots. But Mr. Logical, when I think of Okori, because this is a podcast, right? You got to be a little hyperbolic.
Let's get it. Let's hear it.
So, Ibuka Okori is basically Tyrese Maxey. You know what I mean? So,
you went far on that one.
So if I could get a Tyrese Maxey type player, knowing what we know about Tyrese Maxey now, of course, looking in hindsight, if I could get a player like that here at number 19, number 20 in the draft, why not? You know what I mean? And Quickly, I don't know if I want to continue to pay Quickly the money that I'm paying him. You know, even though he is a good player, even though he went to Kentucky, That just shows you how biased I'm not. But but I just think that, you know what I mean? I think that he brings a certain dynamicism, if that's a word, to Toronto that they need, because they have the big bodies, they have the brawlers, they have the nasties. You know, they need somebody that can get buckets consistently.
But these guys are very young. A lot of these guys that you mentioned, there's a few guys that have been in, college for a while. A lot of 18, 19-year-olds,
Yeah.
And I think it's tough, but like I say, if you feel like his upside is Tyrese Maxey, then I think you're onto something. And if you're the Raptors, you're like, yeah, like I can make that work. But if that 6'2" frame, 185, if it's slight, if it's not solid, if you can't withstand the 82 game schedule, or just the fact that like you might be in a game where the switch happens and it's you and Draymond and he's beating the hell out of you.
Well, yeah, he's another one of these 185-pound guys. So he's definitely got to get those frosted mini wheats going. You know what I mean? Then you got
peanut butter at your bedside table, like Roy Jones did. Peanut butter sandwiches.
Then you got the Western Conference champs at 20. You know what I'm saying? The San Antonio Spurs on the clock.
They definitely get somebody foreign.
Well, they just might.
They go get somebody foreign, put them on ice.
So I think they're going to let Harrison Barnes walk. His $18 million. I think they're going to let Kelly Olynyk walk. Another $13 million. Now where it gets interesting is Champagne is a
$31 million, and neither one of them saw the floor in significant minutes in the latter part of the playoff runs. They need to fix their budgeting in San Antonio.
Yeah, and then you got Biyombo. I mean, he was only making 3.6, but you know what I mean. That's another
doing
dude.
Nothing.
He
was doing nothing. Did nothing for your team.
Well, I mean, he put the hurt on McCain.
That was Plumlee. Plumlee hit him.
Well, both of them hit him. Both of them did. You know what I mean?
And
but
McCain was not the same after that.
But Julius Champagne's a free agent, but he's only making $3 million. He has, it's a club option. So like you might keep him just because he's so cheap. And he's been around, he's in your system. He has a very defined role that you don't have to worry about. He's not the type of dude that's gonna try to take
chip on his shoulder. Yeah.
Maybe.
He's not gonna try to take it over. Yeah.
So this is where
what it felt like to get humiliated by the New York Knicks in front of the world. Yeah.
So this is where
here, boy.
so this is where I think the Spurs have a decision to make. And I've been talking about this the last couple of pods that, as we've been talking about the NBA Finals. I think if you're the Spurs, what?
You can't move De'Aaron Fox if that's what you think.
No, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say that, like, I think I might want a big body and let Wemby play more of that 4 versus being that 5. Like, be Mobley instead of Jared Allen. I might want to do that. So from that standpoint, I look at a guy like Jaden Quainance. Only thing that scares me is obviously the injuries and the knee issues. You don't need to bring that in your building. You just made the NBA Finals. So if you're going to keep this pick and draft somebody, theoretically, saying you at least want somebody that you could throw on the court from time to time.
But the thing with San Antonio is that they would not be opposed to drafting a guy that stayed in Europe for 2 years.
No, I know.
So actually picking a guy that, I mean, you got to work him through his injury history.
Well, unless you think that Wemby is just going to all of a sudden be tough guy, you know what I mean? That's where. So speaking of foreigners, you know what I'm saying? You brought up foreigners, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's where I was trying to go with it to some degree. Now this guy did play college in the United States. You know what I mean? So he's from Estonia. He played for the North Carolina Tar Heels. He goes by the name of Henry Visar. He's 6'11". He's about 225, 230-ish. So a little smaller still, but most of these guys are skinny nowadays. But, he's a 43% three-point shooter at that size. You know what I mean? Like, so he can be interchangeable with Wemby in a lot of ways. And, if you got him on the perimeter, you got reason to tell Wemby to get your big ass down low. You know what I mean? But also, this is another pick and roll option. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
A guy
and there's
that
time.
big, yeah, a guy like that, a guy that big you can still allow. I wouldn't say positionless front court, but Wemby at the 4 or 5 is just for the score sheet. But having a guy that's 7 foot, 225 pounds, just let Wemby can defend out on the perimeter. At least this guy's down there to put a body on someone to rebound. That's what they were lacking in the OG tip. Is
That doesn't happen if
like,
he was if they had this guy.
If that guy's
like,
there,
yeah.
he at a minimum,
Yeah.
it's maybe side out of bounds based on it's some other kind of inconvenience just because I'm a big body down here, and that maybe even Wemby can go further out because of it. Because, like I said, I felt that was, and even the commentators were making note of that. Like Luke Cornett going in, they were attacking the rim. Well, if you have this guy and he could be out there with Luke, the way I felt like Plumlee should have been out there with Luke. Yeah, I think.
I also like, and I also like Terrace Reed right here potentially too. From UConn, who turned it on during the tournament. Averaged 19 and 12 or 19 and 13 in the tournament. Big body, rough and tough. Gave Cam Boozer the blues in that Elite Eight game. So like I like him there too. But so that's the Spurs. So then you get the Pistons at 21. And before I get to my thing I wanted to bring up, I think Cameron Carr is the pick here. 3-and-D guy out of Baylor. He's the guy that had the big combine, 30 points, 6 3-pointers. But from what I've been reading in the reports, he hasn't necessarily had the good workouts since the combine. So it's like he went to the combine to put on a show, and maybe he got full of himself with all the hype. Maybe like he didn't take certain things seriously because he probably could have, after the combine, he probably could have been late lottery. You know what I mean? But now here he is. I think
if he goes to
all the way
these
to Detroit.
workouts and he has to go one-on-one with another guy that weighs more than 190, he's probably getting his ass pushed around.
Right.
6'5", 175. That's skinny.
But I like him for the Pistons because the Pistons need
I'm skinny at 175.
Well, I think the Pistons need another scorer, first of all. You know what I mean? Somebody that is at least a threat to score. But then also, I think that Malik Thomas could be an option here from Arkansas, but I think he'll go a little bit later. But he could be an option there. But what I was going to bring up, Mr. Logical, is I think if you're the Pistons, maybe you call New Orleans and you say, hey, what do you want for Trey Murphy?
He seems to be getting a lot of buzz. I saw a report that maybe the Lakers were
he would be awesome for the Lakers.
Winking at him. I think maybe like Detroit was another place.
Yeah, I think that
sometimes it's good to just be a nice average guy until somebody else gets desperate, and here comes your $12 million a year.
Yeah, and but I think that's where you gotta go. Like you gotta get that scoring because I think that Cunningham needs help in the backcourt. Because they had Jaden Ivey, obviously, who could play that role if they would have kept him. But you know what I mean? Like, since he's not there anymore, that's why I like Malik Thomas here as well. But Carr's bigger as far as height-wise. So I think that would help them out there. 76ers, this could be another spot for Allen Graves, that we talked about earlier. But what do you think about this?
All right, let's hear it.
What do you think about Koa Pete here?
Because Philly?
Yeah, because Philly doesn't need another ball handler per se, like another Paul George kind of guy. They got Maxey already. Maybe you could go center, depending on what happens.
Yeah, Philly doesn't really have Embiid is a big body. But
he is.
His size isn't his attribute. Like some guys like, hey, I'm a big body. I use it to my advantage. I think Embiid is just really talented basketball player, but it's not like Shaq. Shaq was like, listen, I'm 330 pounds when training camp started.
Yeah.
I'm not 330 right now. I'm 355, 360 right now. You got to guard me. And he used his body as an offensive weapon where I don't think Embiid does. Then I don't think Embiid uses his body defensively at all either. I think a guy like Kobe, like you feel like doesn't shoot the ball well, does have like that football, very tough, trench play pedigree. I think he could be the guy that I think he's the guy that when Giannis is coming down the lane, Embiid, get out of the way, I got this. I'm taking his shoulder to the chin, or I'm challenging this guy at the rim. I think he's that kind of a player, especially at like 6'8", damn near 240. That's what I would expect out of him if I'm.
Yeah, and if not Philly, I like him to the champs. You know what I mean?
Knicks.
Like I think he could fit in there as well. But we'll get to the Knicks because I got other ideas for them too. The Hawks, back on the clock again. So you could go one or two ways here. You get Kingston Flemings at 8, and you get Quaintance here, Jaden Quaintance. Get your big
out
man.
of Kentucky.
Yeah, or you could get your Clint Capella kind of guy, Chris Sanok out of Houston, but and that's Kingston Fleming's teammate. So you could go that Villanova route you were talking about with the Knicks,
camaraderie and familiarity.
Yeah, you could do something like that. I think that's probably the best move that they could make.
Especially if you're leaning rebuild. If you're leaning rebuild, then that's the perfect. I think that's the correct formula to implement if you're going rebuild. Get a couple of college teammates in there.
Well, they did get the 5 seed or 6 seed this year.
Not rebuild, but like a retooling. Like
like a retool. Yeah.
Because you made like mid-season trades. You got rid of Trae Young. You brought in Kuminga. You need to kind of like take the moves you made last year. Apparently, you were the only team in the NBA playoffs that could put any kind of pressure on the New York Knicks because everybody else seemed to wilt like spinach in a hot pan against the Knicks. So I think you're probably sitting in the proverbial catbird seat. But if you could get a couple of players that could be part of your youthful foundation, I like that.
Yeah.
So you got the champs at 24.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I put some real thought into this. They might need to go guard just in case Tyler Kolek got to go to jail. You know what I'm saying? So like
that boy was out there like he was an MVP. He had the mink on.
He played 60 games and the cops were like, nah, get over here.
My man had the mink on with the Puma emblem on the back. Puma game. Yeah.
So I like Koa Pete. Like I mentioned Koa Pete. I like Koa Pete for the Knicks. But the Knicks also got some thinking to do here because, Mitchell Robinson's a free agent, making 15 this year. You got Jose Alvarado as a free agent. Jordan Clarkson and Landry Shamet as free agents. So now you got to figure out, how much of this bench depth, what do we do with Deuce McBride, after how he pulled the Wesley Snipes disappearing act. So the Knicks have a couple of ways that they can go here. Terrence Reed is another guy because you might go the route of I don't want to pay Mitchell Robinson $20 million or more, so maybe I need to look at a replacement.
The problem when you win a championship, that offensive rebound is worth $20 million.
It is, you know what I mean. But
and I think that's what. And if you're his agent, you're him, and even if you're in the team, the 113 that Jalen gave back to the team a few years ago, maybe that can kind of matriculate through the players. And it's like, you know what? I could get 22 for over the next 4 years. I'll go 19 and a half, or I'll go 17. I personally don't think the players should have to do that, considering that the valuation of most of these teams is in the, low $4 billion. I imagine the Knicks are probably somewhere around 5.5 to 7. somewhere in that range as far as like if Dolan would have sell tomorrow. So I don't want to tell a guy who's a player who's negotiating millions of dollars on a deal that he should give money back to a billionaire. But I think the chemistry surrounding the Knicks is based off of that, the infamous 113 that Jalen Brunson decided to not, demand in that extension that he signed. But I think you bring back a lot of those players, sprinkle in some rookies. And if somebody is like, if Landry Shamet gets a call from the Lakers and it's like, yo, we're going to give you 2 years, $14 million, then I think out of respect, be like, yo, you got to take that. You got to take that money because we're not giving you $7 million to sit on the bench. So I think that's probably what's going to happen because it always happens when a team wins a championship. The vultures come and try to pluck off your players, and you got to do the best you can to keep those core players. But that Mitchell Robinson rebound secured him as a Knick, in my personal opinion.
And if you do want, to let one of Shamet or Clarkson walk, then this is another Malik Thomas spot as well if they were to go guard. So I think that's what I would like there. Lakers at 25, you know what I mean? Another team. But I think the Lakers probably need to focus in the front court. They need a big man because I don't think Ayton's going to be back. They got to figure out this LeBron thing. They're probably going to max him out again. Rui is a free agent. It sounds like they're going to max Austin Reeves. Kleba and Kennard come off the books. Ayton does have that player option. It's 8.1. Marcus Smart has a 5.4, so maybe both of them come back. Jackson Hayes is a free agent. So
DeAndre Ayton's going to San Antonio.
That would actually not be a bad thing.
He's going to play the 5 and let Wemby play the 4.
That wouldn't be I don't think that would be a bad thing.
I don't think so at all. But I don't know how the money works, but I imagine that.
Well, right now, Ayton is making.
They don't blow a 29-point lead with a bona fide 7-foot center, but on the floor with Wemby at the same time.
Well, his player option is $8 million. So I might be able to get
somebody's got to be giving him, like, if I'm his agent, I'm on the phone with at least one team that wants to give him.
I can get you 14, maybe.
Yeah,
like something.
The Mavericks, New Orleans,
or hey, if I can get you for $12 million, I ain't trying to start. I'm not trying to start the drama. I'm not Cardi B. I'm not the drama. But
Clippers?
Like if you don't want to pay Mitchell Robinson,
go get 2 years, 24 each. 2 years, 24 from the Knicks.
Why not?
You got it. Now, see, that's the thing. Like, DeAndre Ayton has been really known. We talked I talked about this a lot with the Knicks and their role and everyone kind of playing their role, and you know what you're going to get every night. If DeAndre Ayton was expected to get 8 points and 10 rebounds every night, I think at some point he would try to go for 16 points and 8 rebounds. Instead of just yo, dog, just get you 8 points, get you 10, 11 rebounds. Like, we're going to get you these lives. We're going to get you everything you need. Like, just stay connected. He doesn't get that offensive rebound against Wemby. The Lakers need that offensive rebound in the game a game in January. They're down, like the Spurs are up 2. They missed the free throw, and Ayton's down there with Wemby to try to battle for the offensive rebound. Ayton's not getting that rebound and getting a timeout, and now the Lakers have a chance to win. It's just not going to happen, and that's why I don't think he'd be on the Knicks. But I think the Spurs think they might be able to make it work. But he's not going to get any scoring opportunities, and that's probably what he wants. But $8 million. Yeah, I'm opting out of that because somebody will give him 12. Probably Dallas.
All right, then you got the Nuggets on the clock. You know what I mean? Tim Hardaway, free agent.
Denver.
Bruce Brown, free agent.
DeAndre Ayton. Play him at the 4 and bring.
I gotta think about
him at the
that.
5 and bring Jokic away from the hoop.
I gotta think about that. But Hardaway's a free agent. Bruce Brown's a free agent. Peyton Watson is restricted. I think they're going to do everything in their power to keep him. So Christian Brown and Cam Johnson become trade bait potentially. There's rumors that they might use one of those two, if not both, to try to move up in the draft. Aaron Gordon, and this is just me talking now, you know what I'm saying? Do you think about a trade there? Like, I wouldn't want to, because I know what he means to that team. But at the same time, like, good things must come to an end. So could that be another option? But I think I like Isaiah Evans here out of Duke. You know, I think I let Hardaway walk, and this is your replacement, and he brings defense that Hardaway doesn't. He's one of the guys, though, I will admit, you know, that I like a lot, but I just don't know how he's going to project out, what he's going to bring, and how it's going to look. It might be a couple of years on him. And we know that Denver hasn't necessarily, we thought that
they don't develop young players.
Yeah.
So chance.
Yeah. And that's the problem there. But if Denver were to move up, I wonder who they could be looking at, because
how far from 28 to where?
Or 26.
26 to like that.
I mean,
seems like a hell of a leap.
I mean, I don't know if OKC would trade with you to get that 17. Maybe the Spurs trade back. Sixers could maybe trade back, because I don't think the Sixers have an immediate need, but I don't know if it's worth, you know, giving up those players to move up 4 spots either. So
if I'm gonna give up a player in the NBA, because the NBA is, I think, is different when it comes to projections, because you can see, we saw all of the overtime elite guys. You see guys score well in college, you see guys score well overseas, and then they get to the league and it's like, this guy's an 8 and 5 guy and he's getting 18 minutes a game, he's getting 20 minutes a game, or he doesn't have the work ethic. I'm with like the Bill Belichick mindset of, I'll trade the player I have for a guy I've already seen in the league for a couple of years and see if I can get a little bit more out of him than his current team did. I'm not trading Cam Johnson and 26 to move up to 17 to take a gamble on a guy that might be 19 years old, undersized, but with good upside. Like, I'd rather just get a trade for Cam Johnson, that pick, somebody else, and Tyler Hero. So, you know, like something like that. Like,
how far do you think you could
give me a known economy, commodity?
How do you think 26 and Gordon would work for you?
His injury history makes him makes Denver the team that loves him the most, and other teams are like, we don't have the intrinsic like love for him that you guys have. So right. I don't know if you even make that deal, because it's not like he can. It's not. I'm gonna say he does lack versatility, but it's like, if I bring him in, I'm gonna need him to do something a little bit more for me than he did for Denver, because like, I'm giving up a player. I need you to fill that role and give me what you were given in Denver.
Yeah.
And you can't really do that when you're not available.
Okay, so the Celtics at 27. A lot of buzz around Quaintance here, but of course that's going to be dependent on them keeping the pick and depending on how this Giannis thing goes. But I like Zuby Ejiofor here, center out of St. John's. You know, great defensive player, and you know, Embiid was mollywopping the Celtics all around the first round last year. That's why they blew that 3-1 lead. You know, so they're going to need to retool, even if they don't make this Giannis trade, even though I think they would probably be the most likely destination. They have Vucevic coming off the books. You know, that's $20 million coming off. You know, they have Keita, who came on this year, club option for 2.7. So maybe you bring him back. Jordan Walsh had a good year this year. I think you bring him back. So I think if you're Boston, you might look at Ejiofor, and of course, what are you going to do in free agency? Because, of course, that's going to open up here, at the end of the month. So if you're Boston, is it worth getting somebody like an Ejiofor, or do you try to play free agent and see if you could throw something out there for Hartenstein? There's not much out there, but if the Knicks let Mitchell Robinson walk, could that be an option for Boston? So Boston has a lot they can go off of here.
Yeah, I mean that's always the thing when you're a good team like that. When you're 26 through 30 in the draft and you're a team that's been good for a while, it's like you can't do no wrong. Like if you're making a right move. But I think the Giannis deal is probably more pressing than whatever they're going to do in the draft. Because I imagine that this draft pick is going to slide away. Like that draft pick is going to go with whatever Milwaukee wants to get to facilitate Giannis.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, the Derek White potential trade is on the table with Atlanta as well. We'll see how that goes. And then just to finish it off, Cavs and Mavs, like I said, Swain would be a good pick for Cleveland, but I think he'll get gone, before they get on the clock. Koa Pete is another good, could be another nice spot here for them, but Cleveland could go a bunch of different ways. The Mavs are more interesting because of the Cooper Flag thing. If they get their guard early, what do they do here? So, it's going to be interesting. We'll be back on Tuesday. And when we get back on Tuesday, guess what? We'll be watching the draft. You know what I'm saying?
We'll see if how many of these things come to fruition.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, he is the world famous, world renowned, cool, calm, and collected. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing everything New Jerusalem, even though we know him to be a bit of a turncoat because he doesn't want the Nets back. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, they're already out there. They already gentrified the whole neighborhood. Might as well stay there and play some basketball.
He is Mr. Logical. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
Down here in the Alamo, going left so much you thought I was southpaw. Your unorthodox statistician 25. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. Liquid Death in hand. We are everywhere you get your podcast. Say less, say more. We love y'all.
Peace.
Sports Reports is ordered. Out.
Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up.